The January 2026 elections will be the seventh time the electorate heads to the polls since 1986, when the National Resistance Movement government returned the country to the regular electoral administration. Data from the last 6 elections shows that the gap between the ruling regime and its opponents has consistently narrowed. President Museveni has been the only constant figure in the 6 elections, which have produced 3 separate formidable challengers. When the electorate went to the polls in 1996, Museveni, who even then was the incumbent president, was up against Democratic Party President General Paul Kawanga Semogere and the Justice Forum candidate Mohamed Kibirige Mayanja. President Museveni was declared victorious in those polls, having garnered 4.4 million votes, representing 74%. Semogere followed in a distant second place, having polled 1.4 million votes, representing 23% of the electorate. Kibirige polled 123,291 votes, or about 2.1%, to come in third place. The 1996 election turned out to be the least competitive of the 5 elections since, given the wide gap between the winner, who scored 74%, against the combined 25.7% scored by the opposition. Since 1996, election losers in the polls that followed claimed that the process was rigged in favor of President Museveni. However, in all these instances, only Semogere never petitioned the courts of law to insist that the poll wasn't fair. A second election, organized under the NRM regime in 2001, saw President Museveni facing his former personal doctor during the Bush War period, Dr. Kizza Besigye. The duo battled it out in 3 subsequent elections in 2006, 2011 and 2016, with Museveni winning all encounters. Besides Museveni and Besigye, the 2001 presidential elections attracted 4 other contenders in Agra Wori, Kibirige Mayanja, Francis Wenje, and Chapa Karuhanga. The 2001 poll marked the beginning of the narrowing of the margin between the victor and the losers, as the percentage of the votes received by Museveni dropped from 74% in 1996 to 69.3% in 2001. Museveni's opponents had gained a combined 30.7% higher than the 25.7% scored in the 1996 elections. Out of the 30.7% votes attained by the opposition, Besigye controlled 27.8%. It is dictated by Section 57, subsection 4 of the Presidential Elections Act that a candidate shall not be declared elected as president unless the number of the votes cast in favor of the candidate at the presidential election is more than 50% of the valid votes cast at the election. The 2006 presidential elections were the first for the opposition candidates to get closer to the 50% mark, as the percentage of votes garnered by Museveni reduced below 60%. The candidates competed for the first time under political parties that came about after the population voted in 2005 in a referendum to return to multi-party politics after a protracted fight by supporters of the multi-party system. This was after 20 years of being under the movement system. President Museveni emerged victorious in the 2006 elections, having garnered 59.3% and a combined 40.7% for the opposition, of which Besigye alone polled 37.3%.
You know now, everything is predetermined. But there has to be method to the predetermining. Because if you give yourself 90, 95, 85, it will be scandalous. It will look like there was no competition. Right? So the modern autocrat has understood that for you to carry on with this facade of democracy, there has to be competition. Even in the outcome, you have to show competition. Right? So you can't give yourself 90. 51 is good enough. 51, I won't be shocked from 70 wins by 52. I won't be shocked because it's good enough.
Despite the optimism for change among the opposition, their performance declined in 2011 as the gap widened once again. Museveni obtained 68.4% of the votes, and the opposition portion of the poll result declined to 31.6%. The gap narrowed a little again in 2016 as Museveni garnered 60.6% of the votes cast, while the opposition took a combined 39.4%, of which Besigye received 35.6%. Besigye never presented himself for the election in 2021, but the void that would have been left by his absence was filled by the National Unity Platform Party, which presented Robert Kyagulanyi. The 2021 elections that was held under strict COVID-19 restrictions went into history as one of the most violent. The arrest of Chagulanyi in Luka in Busoga sub-region sparked violent protests that subsequently resulted in the killing of at least 54 people, according to figures by the government. In a near repeat of the 2006 voting pattern, the opposition narrowed the gap, although they fell below the 50% mark. Museveni was declared the winner of the elections, having polled a majority of 58.4% and the opposition 41.6% of the votes cast. This was Museveni's lowest since 1996.
I think if you see 70-30 like we had in 1996, then 60-40, then for me that pattern it speaks volumes about the authenticity of the competition that we have at the political level.
That you have very few people turn out to vote. So when you have very few people turn out to vote, then you will have those votes divided between the NRM and also the opposition political parties. And these numbers keep on changing depending on the political players. Like previously, remember we had Besigye on board, and then this time round, in the previous election, and this time round, then we have Bobby Wine or Chagulanyi, who is taking on most of the numbers of the younger people.
Governance analysts have predicted that the trend could be maintained in the 2026 elections.
We don't know what to expect. I think the opposition can cross that mark. But one of the challenges that the opposition face is that they have failed to strategically sit down and devise a strategy that would work for them against the ruling party. If you look at what happened in the previous elections, is that they tried somehow to unite against the ruling party, but they failed. This time round, we thought that they would unite, but things have played out the other way around.
However, Boni Chichoncho Kashaija Mutunji, a member of the ruling NRM, is under the impression that the party will put in a better performance in the forthcoming elections.
For sure, NRM is improving, and I want to assure you that this time around 2026, it will regain its strength because people are beginning to appreciate that it's the right party, are beginning to appreciate that we are on the right track.
The outcome of the past election shows how divided the population is on who should be at the helm of power. Although section has argued that the level of violence in those past elections led nearly half of the electorate to sympathize with the opposition. Jackson Onyango, NTV.